Good evening, and I'm very sorry that this Bible study introduction is a wee bit later this week in preparation for our Zoom Bible study tomorrow. However, I hope that you'll still find this very useful. We're now going to begin a new series on the book of Isaiah, and tomorrow we'll have an introduction to it, and then we'll try and go through, not all through the book, you'll be glad to know, but we'll pick out various themes throughout the book of Isaiah as we do go through. And maybe it's a book we've not considered before to study, but it's perhaps one of the most important books of the Old Testament. The little is known about who Isaiah is, about his life, but he is considered to be one of the greatest prophets. We may know verses that come to mind from the book of Isaiah that are familiar to us, such as Isaiah 9. We hear this in the season of preparation to Christmas. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And then Isaiah 41, another commonly known verse and commonly quoted: Fear not, for I am with you, be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will hold you in my righteous right hand. The book of Isaiah is a collection of all sorts of things, oracles, prophecies, reports, but a common theme through all of it is the message of salvation. There was, according to these writings, no hope in anything that was made by people. And we have this situation where the northern kingdom of Israel had been carried into captivity in 722 BC, and the kingdom of Judah was in the middle of idolatry and evil. The kingdom of Assyria had dominated the Fertile Crescent and posed a major risk to both kingdoms. And the kingdom of Babylon was gaining power and would replace Assyria as the main force. In view of this fast-changing, what could be described as an international scene, the people of Israel were concerned about where they were going and what was around about them. They might ask questions such as, what would have become of the promises of God? How could the chosen people survive, let alone be a theocracy again? How must the remnant of the righteous also suffer with all those who are pagans? And this book addresses these questions and many other questions. And as we look at the first chapter, tomorrow will be helpful if you do read the first chapter before coming on. There was a purging of the nations we see in the first chapter because God is holy. Before the nation could inherit the promises made to the fathers, it would have to be sanctified, made holy. So God would use the pagan nations to chasten Israel for its sins, to cleanse it from its iniquities. And even though the judgment of the captivity would punish sin and destroy the wicked unbelievers, the removal of iniquity would ultimately be the work of the servant Lord. We know that in the promised Messiah. And on the basis of such purification or sanctification, God would then establish a golden age, a time of peace and prosperity that had never been known before. And then he would use the remnant who are left behind to rule over the nations, rather than to allow the nations again to discipline them. And the message of salvation, the message of salvation is the prophet Isaiah, whose name means salvation of Yahweh, or Yah saves. He was the son of Amos. He might have been related to the royal family, perhaps King Manasseh, by whom he was believed to have sworn asunder. He prophesied the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah. He may have lived past Hezekiah's reign into the reign of Manasseh. And assuming that he was a young man at the death of Uzziah in 742 BC, when his official ministry began, he might have been 70 or 80 at the time of his death. So that might have been about 680 BC. So therefore this prophet perhaps ministered for 60 years or so. And the collection of oracles that we see here in this book show the progression of Israel's history over time. the prophet began preaching through the Assyrian crisis about the time that Assyria destroyed the northern kingdom and was threatening the southern kingdom. Although Hezekiah was able to survive that invasion with the help of the prophet, he foolishly allowed the ambassadors from Babylon to sell all the treasures of the kingdom, a sin that brought Isaiah's announcement of the Babylonian captivity in the future. There is a historical interlude before the second half, which focuses on the captivity in Babylon. And of course, the prophet had no idea when that captivity would come. For him, it could have been exactly right after the death of Hezekiah, and it might mean his audience went into exile. So he began to prepare them, telling them about what was going to happen. For the exile began 100 years after the death of Isaiah. But the second portion of the book looks in a general way to the future time. He writes a message of comfort and hope to the exiles and describes restoration to Jerusalem. And that hope of salvation is something that obviously alludes to the New Testament and the new age of a new heaven and the new earth. So in setting, the first half of the book is Judah in the day of the Assyrians. The setting for the second half is Babylon, then Jerusalem again, and then beyond that is the age to come. The target audience, as it were, for the first half is the Israel before exile, and then the second half is Israel during exile, and then the return. And in both parts, the oracles looked at the distant future for their main meaning and application. Each section contains vivid descriptions as well as general and poetic descriptions. And perhaps there has been thoughts about who wrote it all. Some people have said that maybe there was different writing styles, maybe different writers behind it. But ultimately, we are looking here at a book of Isaiah, looking at these themes of pre- and post-exile. And tomorrow we're looking at chapter 1, looking at the wickedness of Judah. And we see the language that's used, the tone, just the feeling of frustration as well. So this is something for us to look at over the next few weeks, and hopefully it will be a productive time looking at God's word. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.